And welcome back. We're very pleased to have a special guest with us this morning to continue our conversation on the evolution of shared services going back to the eGov Act of 2002. But we're going to be focusing a little bit more on more recent years, since the years following the Bush and the Obama and the into the Trump administration, where Jessica Salmoiraghi played a very important role in rolling out shared services from her post in the Office of government-wide policy at GSA. So welcome this morning, Jessica. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Maybe you could start off by telling us a little bit about how you got to your role at GSA. What were you doing before in your career path that led to that? And then tell us a little bit about your current responsibilities at the Golden Key Group, which is a very important sponsor of the Shared Services Leadership Coalition and a very important player in the shared services community.
Thank you so much, John, for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited to talk about shared service. As you know, and as many of the other folks who are watching this know, I'm a pretty passionate advocate. I got to shared service in a unique way because I actually came out of federal and international procurement. So I was really excited about what happened there and how to talk to Congress, how to talk to the executive branch about procurement issues. What's also interesting is being the Associate Administrator for the Office of Government-Wide Policy. Yes, the world's longest title. What happens there is it's also the Chief Acquisition Officer at GSA. So I was asked to join the administration kind of more for the procurement side of the house rather than for shared service. In being in that role, I found a new and exciting opportunity to make government more efficient. And that's really one of the things that has sprung from that role that I had is kind of an excitement about shared service.
Yeah. So tell us a little more about your role at GSA and as heading up the Office of Government-Wide Policy, Jessica, because that you had a big portfolio and shared services was an important part, but there was a lot more to it than just that. And my experience with you has been on the shared services side, but and maybe many in our audience, but tell us a little bit about the larger other aspects that you were also leading.
Certainly. We actually, OGP works very much on government-wide regulation. So it's an interesting department within GSA that focuses on, it has the seat on the FAR Council, it sets per diem rates, it sets federal travel guidance, and it sets a number of other regulations across, including on IT, and then also is working on shared service. What's fascinating there, and I do need to continue to talk about shared service because that actually led me to moving out to Golden Key Group. That's a federal shared service provider working on HR, on federal human resources. So what's nice there is that we're providing those services for a number of government agencies. And really providing frankly, a shared service across that section. So that's been able to continue taking both the acquisition policy world that I had beforehand, but combining it nicely with a shared service model too.
Yeah, they fit well together. So tell us a little bit about what was the state of shared services when you arrived at GSA, when you were first appointed, Jessica. There have been lots of progress across multiple administrations of both parties, from the Bush years into the Obama years, and then you picked up this portfolio for the Trump administration. And what do you recall about the state of play at the time you arrived? And then tell us a bit about some of the value adds that in your administration under your leadership were added to the mix.
There was a lot of excitement. Everyone was really excited about what was happening on shared service and the opportunity that it provided. What was fascinating as I was becoming more educated in the progress and the history, which I know a lot of my other colleagues have talked about, but really this started off in Clinton. There were discussions about the eGov Act under President Clinton, but then it came to be under President Bush. And then it continued to roll out through President Obama, and then into President Trump's administration. What's exciting about that is there was genuinely we have runway and we have a path forward to launch this. What was exciting there is you'd seen the M3 process had really been fully developed and fully integrated. There had been an enormous amount of work. I know other colleagues are going to talk on this about what needs to happen, where are those shared services and where are those opportunities. But it seems like there had been further focus, further kind of tightening of what needed to happen. So the SAPACs were finally appointed. That, the SAPAC kind of conversation was developed and introduced under that administration. M1916, which I think I know it went through numerous drafts, was actually put out through OMB. And that really was the first time we'd seen a framework come out on what our shared services going to be. We had 3, and then at the end of the administration, 4 pre-appointed, appointed, and approved QSMOs. Right? The entire QSMO concept, Quality Service Management Organization, came out of the administration. And that was something that we were really excited about, because you had leadership, you had focus, you had agencies that stepped forward and said, I want to do this, I want to lead, either it be HR, cyber, FM, or grants. What was more exciting is some of the stuff that's happening and you're seeing bear fruit now is that you had individuals that were individual agencies that said, you know what, I think I could do a QSMO. We should think about QSMOs for real estate or for travel. And those were things that no one had really thought of, but there was incredible amount of focus from our leadership, right? From the up at the top, saying, what more can we do to launch this? So that's where it was nice to step in and then to kind of watch it take off.
Yeah, it was very exciting being on the outside, watching all of this take shape, because we saw really a very impressive level of cooperation at the highest ranks of GSA and OMB together. We had the administrator of GSA, Emily Murphy, and the federal CIO, Suzette Kent, who kind of tag team as the overall initiative leaders, and shared services, or sharing quality services as it was known then, became part of a CAPGOAL initiative, and which gave it even greater visibility and perhaps purchase, across the government. How did you see that come together, that relationship come together? And they seem to be so well aligned, the two agencies, from the top all the way through the ranks.
I think it's because there was such tight alignment between both Suzanne and Emily that just flowed naturally down. There was really good partnerships, and frankly, there were a lot of organizational and relationships that continued through. But it always helps when you have that good top cover to be able to execute. And it was very clear from both of our leaders that this was going to get done, and how can we make it work. So it was never a question of, well, it'll happen eventually. No, let's get it to work now.
Yeah, that was really well done. And there was actually a precedent for that close cooperation in the Obama administration. We had Dave Mader, from whom we've already heard in this video series, from his post as the controller at OMB, and he also wore the hat of the Shared Services Policy Officer. And he was tagged up with Beth Angerman and her chain of command at GSA, and they were very, very tight team as well. And then Beth was part of the team that you inherited when you came into GSA in your post. And so there was tremendous continuity there as well at the career level that helped things keep moving forward. Jessica, tell us a little bit more about the rollout of OMB M1916. That was a really important directive from OMB. As you referenced a few minutes ago, it created the Quality Service Management offices, and really it was all about creating a new marketplace where commercial and government providers could compete for the business of customer agencies. This must have required some pretty close coordination and discussion with our friends in the legislative branch. Tell us how that worked.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that was exciting about the rollout of M1916 was that we had a press release. There was a press release there from all of OMB, from GSA, from HHS, from Treasury, sorry for doing, and from CISA. Everyone was kind of gathered together, but seated at the table to do a press release. That same group then went to the Hill and then actually briefed all of the oversight committees. One of the things that's really important to know about shared services, shared services, it is and still was and is an opportunity to make government work better. And that was something where we have to have those discussions, both within the executive branch, which, as you heard from everyone so far, that had been happening. But it's also, how do you have those discussions with folks on the Hill so that the congressional staffers and congressmen and senators and their staff understand what is the purpose and point of shared service? So we had a number of meet and greets and conversations with congressmen, their staff, senators and their staff to talk about the value and benefit of shared service and why this was a good thing going forward in the government.
Yeah. And of course, you were working both sides of the aisle. Shared services has always been a bipartisan initiative going way back to when it started, and it's support through several administrations of both parties. What kinds of concerns did you pick up on the Hill? Were they, did you get much pushback, or were people, kind of ready to accept the idea?
I think a lot of it was education. What is this thing? What is this concept? Right? What do you mean by HR shared service? What do you mean by FM or cyber or, grant shared service? Some of them make a little more intuitive sense than others. We would talk a little bit about HR because the HR system is still coded in COBOL, which is not the most modern system. But the question becomes, how do you try to get all of these payroll providers to work together so that we're providing consistently good service to federal employees? But that was a conversation that you're like, hold on. A lot of staffers either A, hadn't heard about it, or B, had heard kind of just bits and pieces, not a cohesive whole. It's really popular in the commercial sector. I always think about ADP. And how they're doing so much payroll providing for so many of the private sector companies, but we don't have that same situation in the government. You've got 5 different payroll providers instead of one ADP. And the question then becomes, is there a better way to actually give service and value to those federal employees?
Yeah. Did you have any discussions with the appropriators during those days? And how did that go?
Yeah, no, it was a fairly wide discussion. I think that actually leads to a much bigger conversation, because how do you fund change in the government? I mean, not to pull us off onto other tangents, but this is, if you're talking about IT change, that isn't a 6-month, 1-year appropriated project. That's frankly somewhere between 5 and 10 years. So these are questions where we're trying to talk to the appropriators about needs. The need in government is huge right now. I think everybody agrees that. But how do you make change, and how do you kind of appropriate change? How do you fund change when you're in a 1-year cycle? That's the bigger challenge that we were dealing with. So it's a question of trying to have them understand this is the program, this is the problem, but we couldn't quite, figure out exactly how to fix that. I'm hopeful that we'll get there soon.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you went to that issue, Jessica, because we didn't want to leave that off the table. That keeps coming back in all the discussions we're having when we think about unfinished business and remaining challenges. That just seems to be the nut that we haven't been able to crack. What thoughts might you have about how to finally crack that one?
I think working capital funds are good, which I know is not always a popular thing, but also how do you allow organizations that are doing shared services or truly actually doing anything for the government if they are finding extra value and ways to save money, can they hold on to that money to make more changes going forward? So really trying to think a little bit further about how the appropriators and how the government's funding long-term change. I would love to see more money coming out of the TMF. Thank you. Money coming out of the TMF for some bigger projects. They've been smaller so far, and I think that makes it helps small projects get moving. But really, for a TMF, for some of these larger challenges, we need to kind of do moonshots, and those are always a challenge when you talk about federal appropriations and federal finances.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. Another interest among many in on the industry side is this idea that if the government would allow industry to make investments and bring innovation to the table that they would finance, can you give them a longer runway to return ROIs and recoup their initial investment? And public-private partnerships and share and savings, there are lots of ideas that have come forth through the years to make that work better. And even going back to the eGov Act of 2002, there was a provision there which is long since expired, which was piloting the idea of share and savings. Do you have any thoughts, Jessica, from your acquisition perspective as to how we might open up more opportunities, to get away from just straight competitive procurements and single year appropriations to allow that kind of innovation to come into the marketplace?
It's interesting, John, when we're talking about shared savings, that was another popular contracting vehicle that was kind of in vogue in the early to mid aughts, right? And I don't know where that's going. No one talks about it anymore. So it's interesting that I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think if you're finding a way to bring competitive, incentivizing all of the parties to bring their best foot forward, then you can find ways to find the savings. I worry, I don't know, that seems to be maybe a bridge too far under the current FAR-based system, but there might be some other opportunities to think about that. So I love it conceptually. I think we've got to go to the Hill and really talk to folks about, hey, let's think about how to incentivize both agencies and the public sector or private sector to recoup those savings and then use it towards something new, because that's never really been indoctrinated in the FAR. Yeah, no, and that's so hard, but we got to keep working at it, as you say. So, Jessica, looking back now on where we've been, where we've come, how far we've come, and a lot of progress made under your leadership in the Trump administration. What do you see? What kind of stands out as the most important lessons learned and the unfinished business, to fulfill the vision finally of shared services, going back to the eGov Act and since then? I think really, if we're talking about the successes, we got it done, right? We actually got M1916 launched. We have 4 QSMOs named. We have more in the docket. We have more people that are excited about it. What I want to see in terms of getting to the next step, I really want to see our QSMOs executing. I can't wait to see the marketplaces that are coming out of both HHS and Treasury. I think those are really exciting services. I'm excited about OPM's HR opportunity, because that is, again, working in HR, we do need a fairly significant amount of work on that area, but it actually has huge benefits to the federal employees. So that's something where I think the more we can focus on trying to make it a better opportunity, a better working environment for our federal employees, you can't lose. Yeah. And it's also, cyber's not going anywhere. This is going to be something that we have to focus on for the rest of our careers and probably well and beyond that. But how are we going to invigorate that cyber marketplace and make it something where it is an opportunity for folks to come in, have resources that they need, for agencies can come in, get vetted resources, competed resources, and then move out, instead of working through a number of different organizations.
Yeah. Well, you're so right, Jessica. The proof will be in the pudding when the QSMOs stand up as marketplaces and we really start to see agencies taking advantage of those new state-of-the-art services and terminating the legacy systems, which is another tough nut to crack, but hopefully we'll get there one of these days. Jessica, before we go, tell us a little bit more about Golden Key Group and your role there, because you are a very important player on the industry side, the commercial side of the shared services marketplace.
Thank you so much, John. That's very kind of you to say. I'm actually the Executive Vice President of Managed and Shared Services over at Golden Key, and I also lead the growth team there. So what I'm excited about is, working with industry to actually fulfill that opportunity in shared service. As you can tell, I'm a shared service advocate and a passionate one at that. So really working, but with Golden Key, with the work we're focused on is really trying to make HR better, whether it's, operations, human capital, even in the IT space, really trying to work together and make it better because the opportunity is there to really improve everyone's, frankly, all of the federal employees' lives through better HR.
Yeah, no question. Well, you're doing great work over there. And Jessica, thank you so much. You have contributed so much through your service to the American people in the Trump administration from your role at GSA, and you're continuing to do that on the industry side at the Golden Key Group. And you're a leading light in our community, and it's just been a real pleasure here catching up with you and hearing your reflections on where shared services have been and where we're going in the future.
John, thank you so much for the opportunity, and we really appreciate your support.
Thank you, Jessica. Great being with you.
Good being with you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.